Pedro López, the man dubbed the Monster of the Andes, confessed to the murder of over 300 children, making him one of the world's most prolific serial killers. These chilling words introduce us to a man whose life became a horrifying testament to the darkest corners of human nature. Pedro López, a name that sends shivers down the spine of those familiar with his deeds. Born in Santa Isabel, Colombia, his reign of terror began in the late 60s and spanned over a decade. His victims weren't just confined to his homeland. Pedro's monstrous acts crossed borders, reaching into neighboring countries, making his vile footprints a haunting echo across South America. His victims were young, innocent girls. Girls who should have been playing, learning and growing. Their lives were brutally cut short by this man. A man who, for reasons we may never truly comprehend, chose to inflict such unspeakable harm. And the most terrifying aspect of all, the sheer number of his victims. While the confirmed count stands at 110, Pedro López himself claimed the figure was closer to 300, a number that is almost impossible to fathom. Each digit in that number represents a life stolen, a family shattered, a community left in fear. For years, his confessions were met with skepticism. How could one man commit such atrocities on a scale that large? The horrifying truth came to light when a flash flood, an act of nature, revealed some of his burial sites. The evidence was undeniable, and the world was forced to confront the reality of the monster it had unwittingly harbored. In 1980, López was arrested. Yet, in 1998, he was released and subsequently vanished. His current whereabouts remain a mystery, leaving a chilling question in the air. Is the 72-year-old monster of the Andes still out there? But who exactly is Pedro López, and what led him down this path of horrific crimes? As we delve deeper into his life and deeds, we hope to shed light on these questions, though the answers may be as haunting as the man himself. Born on October 8, 1948 in Santa Isabel, Colombia, Pedro López's life was marked by violence and neglect from the very beginning. In the heart of Colombia, nestled in the shadows of the Andes, a child was born into a world of hardship and adversity. Pedro López, the seventh of 13 children, was born to a prostitute mother who made ends meet in the only way she knew how. His father, a member of the country's right-wing party, was killed months before his birth during the violent period known as La Violencia. From an early age, López was exposed to the harsh realities of life. His mother was often absent, leaving him and his siblings to fend for themselves. Food was scarce, and love even scarcer. The world was a battlefield, and survival was the only victory. As he grew older, López's life took a darker turn. At the tender age of 8, he was caught by his mother in a compromising situation with his younger sibling. Cast out onto the streets, he was left to navigate the world alone. It was during these formative years that López would first encounter crime. Survival on the harsh streets of Colombia required cunning and ruthlessness. López quickly learned to steal to sustain himself, but petty theft soon escalated into more severe crimes. By his early teens, López had already been picked up by the police on multiple occasions. These encounters with the law did little to deter him. Instead, they served as a bitter introduction to a system that he would come to despise. It was in these moments that a seed was planted in young Pedro's mind. A seed that would eventually grow into a monstrous tree of heinous crimes. Pedro López was a product of his environment, a child forced into adulthood far too soon. His early life was marked by violence, neglect, and crime. But these harsh experiences were not an excuse for the atrocities he would later commit. They were, however, the soil in which the seeds of his monstrous persona were sown. These early experiences, however, were merely a prelude to the horrors that were to come. By 1969, López had embarked on a monstrous spree that would span across Colombia, Peru, and Ecuador. Pedro López was not your typical villain. He was a predator, a hunter who knew his terrain and his prey all too well. Young girls, often from impoverished backgrounds, became his unfortunate targets. The innocence and vulnerability these children carried were the very attributes that attracted this monster. Operating under the cloak of anonymity and the bustling chaos of South America, López committed his unspeakable acts. His modus operandi was chillingly consistent. He would lure his victims with small gifts or promises of easy money before leading them away to isolated areas. There, he would commit his heinous acts, leaving behind a trail of devastation that remained undiscovered for years. But how did López manage to evade capture for so long? The answer lies in his cunning manipulation of the societal norms and the legal loopholes of his time. He preyed on the most vulnerable, those whose absence would likely go unnoticed in a society grappling with its own issues of poverty and unrest. He exploited the borders of neighboring countries, using them as a shield to hide his tracks and elude law enforcement. López's reign of terror continued unabated, his count of victims rising steadily into the hundreds. Yet, his crimes remained largely unnoticed, buried under the dust of time and the constant turmoil that engulfed the region. It's a chilling thought that such a predator could operate so freely, but it's even more disturbing to consider the number of lives he destroyed. The confirmed number of victims stands at 110, but López himself claimed a number far greater, reaching over 300. However, the true scale of López's crimes only came to light after an unexpected natural disaster. A flash flood in the late 70s unearthed a gruesome secret, a burial site containing the remains of his victims. It was a macabre revelation that finally brought the monster of the Andes into the harsh light of reality. The true scale of López's crimes only came to light after an unexpected natural disaster. In 1980, a flash flood in Ecuador revealed a gruesome secret: the hidden graves of López's victims. A discovery that would finally bring the monster of the Andes to justice, but not before he'd left a devastating trail of destruction spanning nearly a decade. Following this horrific revelation, local law enforcement intensified their efforts, piecing together a chilling puzzle. From the scattered remnants of innocence in the flood-ravaged land, they traced the path of a predator, and it led them to one man, Pedro López. The evidence was overwhelming and López was swiftly arrested, but the arrest was just the beginning. The true horror unfolded as López began to talk. His confessions were chilling, almost unimaginable. He admitted to preying on young girls from as early as 1969, revealing a campaign of terror that crossed borders and shattered lives. He spoke with a cold detachment, recounting his deeds with a horrifying clarity that left seasoned investigators speechless. López claimed to have murdered more than 300 children, a shocking number that dwarfed the confirmed count of 110. The scale of his crimes was staggering, marking him as one of the most prolific serial killers in history. But his confessions were met with skepticism. Could one man truly be capable of such monstrous acts? Yet the evidence was undeniable. The discovery of his victims' graves corroborated his confessions, painting a grim picture of his reign of terror. Each grave, a testament to a life cut short, a family left in mourning, and each confession, a chilling reminder of the monster that had walked among them, undetected for so long. However, López's arrest and confessions were just the first steps in a complex and controversial legal process. A process that would see him standing trial for his unspeakable crimes, but ultimately walking free. Despite confessing to hundreds of murders, López's trial and sentencing were far from conventional. The story of Pedro López is a chilling reminder of the monsters that can lurk in the shadows and the justice that sometimes falls short. Charged with the confirmed murders of 110 girls, López was sentenced to a mere 16 years in prison, the maximum sentence under Ecuadorian law at the time. Such a staggeringly low sentence for such heinous crimes sent shockwaves through the public. The trial of Pedro López, or as he was more chillingly known, the Monster of the Andes, was one that gripped the world. The courtroom was filled with an eerie tension, a collective disbelief at the atrocities this man had committed. Despite the overwhelming evidence and his own chilling confessions, López's nonchalance and lack of remorse were truly disturbing. His time in prison was uneventful, serving his sentence with an air of indifference. He remained largely silent, offering no further insights into his monstrous deeds. The world watched, waited, and hoped for justice to be served. However, in 1998, López was released from prison, having served his full term. This was met with widespread outrage and fear. A man responsible for the confirmed deaths of over 100 innocent girls was now free to roam once again. But it is here, following his release, that the story of Pedro López takes an unexpected twist. Upon leaving prison, López disappeared. vanished without a trace. Despite extensive searches and investigations, no sign of the Monster of the Andes was found. Rumors abound about his whereabouts. Some believe he may have returned to his life of crime, continuing his reign of terror in secret. Others suggest he may be living under a new identity, hiding in plain sight. However, without any concrete evidence, these remain just speculations. Over 2 decades have passed since his release, and the mystery surrounding Pedro López's disappearance continues to baffle investigators and haunt the public. A man once so feared, now lost in the annals of time, leaving behind a chilling legacy of horror and death. Today, the Monster of the Andes remains at large, his whereabouts unknown. More than 2 decades after his release, Pedro López's fate remains a chilling mystery. The Monster of the Andes, as he was called, vanished into thin air, leaving behind a haunting legacy of terror and pain. Speculations about his whereabouts are as varied as they are unsettling. Some believe he may have returned to his life of horrifying transgressions under a new identity, possibly in a different country. Others fear he might have met a violent end, perhaps at the hands of one seeking vengeance. Yet there are those who argue that he may have simply blended back into society, a chilling thought that keeps many awake at night. The impact of López's monstrous crimes extends far beyond the victims themselves. Families were shattered, parents forever haunted by the loss of their daughters. Communities across Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru were gripped by fear, their trust in humanity profoundly shaken. The pain and the scars are still palpable, even after all these years. López's case also served as a grim wake-up call for law enforcement agencies. It exposed glaring gaps in the system, from the initial skepticism towards his confessions to the shocking decision to release him in 1998. It highlighted the urgent need for improved methods of tracking and monitoring such dangerous criminals, a lesson that resonates even today. Yet, amidst the darkness, there were glimmers of resilience and hope. Communities came together, supporting each other through the unimaginable grief. Efforts were made to strengthen laws and protective measures for children, sparking a wave of social change. It was a testament to the indomitable human spirit, even in the face of such abhorrent evil. As we delve into the chilling mystery that is Pedro López, we are left with more questions than answers. Where is he now? Is he still alive? Could he possibly be continuing his reign of terror? The unsettling truth is, we may never know. The tale of Pedro López serves as a grim reminder of the monsters that can lurk among us, their crimes often hidden until it's too late. The story of Pedro López is a chilling testament to the dark side of human nature. It's a tale that unveils a figure who, for nearly a decade, cast a shadow of terror across 3 nations. López's life, stained with the blood of at least 110 innocent lives, paints a vivid picture of evil personified. As we reflect on this journey into his life, let's not forget the victims who suffered at his hands. Their lives, their stories, and their untimely ends are a call to action for justice, both served and unserved. The Monster of the Andes may have slipped through the cracks of the judicial system, but he will forever be etched in the annals of criminal history. As we continue to ponder the mystery of his current whereabouts, we remember the victims and hope for a world where such horrors are no longer a reality.